Hello. Hello, people. Hello. Hello, Helen Johnson. Hello, Maureen, not O'Connell. Yes, please hit the like button. Thank you, Maureen. Hi, Garth. Nice to see you. Kathy White. Looks like all kinds of fun people are here already. Is this when Megan got schooled about shaving? I believe that does come up in this one. She tells that story more than once. Not more melatonin. Yes, more melatonin. Do make sure you're seated before I press play. So yeah, happy Sunday, everybody. Dee Dee LaBelle, Michelle DeMattis, CH to CH. Yay, everybody's here. So I had already planned this live stream and was all set to do it on Sunday when I received an email. So first of all, I should just say I don't have any credentials particularly. I'm an ex-mechanic with an English degree. These are just my opinions. I'm just here to, for entertainment. And if we learn something along the way, then so be it. Often you folks teach me things. So, so I just want to say that. So, so I had been planning this video anyway, and then I received an email, which was a big surprise to me, but I received an email from Lori's sister, Summer. And she was wanting to, I guess she wanted mostly to give me some information to say that, similarly, if you remember a month or so ago, I had an email from an immediate family member of Megan's who had said they appreciated my take on Megan and they wanted to provide me some background to sort of back up what were my instincts. And so I was extremely surprised to hear from Summer, and also extremely, I don't know what else to say, but I was really moved by her communication, and she has given me permission to share some of her family memories and to kind of straighten the record out a little bit. So she also shared a few family photos with me. So I made just a very small collage, just with 3 pictures. So I'm gonna play this little collage in the background, and I'm gonna read Summer's statement on Megan. So this is, I was extremely honored to be trusted by someone who has every reason to never trust anyone ever again in this world. And to me, it's just a huge testament to the potential resilience of the human spirit, right? And the ability to still have compassion and still trust, and still, even after experiencing the kind of trauma that most of us can't even imagine, right? Can't even conceive of. So hello, Ginny. Hello, HMS Gen X lady. I got your email and I have forwarded that information. So thank you very kindly for that. It's all just happened, so I don't know if anything, nobody has figured anything out yet, but thank you. So this is my plan. Hi, Thistlebay82. Nice to see you. So so the first thing I'm going to do is share hang on, I got to remove this first. These are going to be our hosts today. Later, we're going to be watching the video the first time that Lauren interviewed Megan. So look forward to that. So I remove this. I'm going to add this. I'm going to press play on this little short montage. There's no sound. And then I'm going to just read from Summer's statement. So here we go. Hi, Debs in Space. Hi, Kelly Kel. Welcome, everybody. I am just about to start reading an email statement that I received from, everybody knows her as Summer Shiflett, I believe, Lori Vallow Daybell's sister. So I will just start, and it's a little bit lengthy, so I'm just going to read, and you can enjoy these few little pictures while I read. So she says, "Hi, Penny. I am Lori Valadebel's sister, Summer. Someone sent me a video you did covering Megan, and I appreciated your ability to call out her toxic behavior, even without knowing any of her backstory. I then watched some of the video where you shared what a family member had shared with you. I respect that source and wanted to offer them my support. I also happen to believe that the things Megan has done to my family and to Christina pale in comparison with what she's done to her own family. I agree with all of that source's information, with the exception of the Juilliard scholarship. I would need to see the actual letter to fully believe that one. I recently watched some of your video where you offer commentary on Megan's victim impact statement, barf emoji. I decided to reach out as Megan has dragged my 2 deceased sisters into her attention grab, and since you are currently covering it, I thought I would offer you my insight if you care to hear it." Hello, Grizzly Bear Kelly. We are hearing from Summer at the moment. I'm reading a statement that she emailed to me. So carrying on. "I cannot even begin to tell you the frustration level of having to deal with her peddling her dumb stories to any and every news outlet, podcast, YouTube channel that will tolerate her. I could not even begin to scratch the surface of the amount of lies she has told, nor will I waste your time trying to explain them all. But as relevant from your most recent video, I would like to touch on 3 important things. Number 1, my sister Lolly was born June 24th, 1971. So her birth, the anniversary of her birth is coming right up. She was adored every day of her precious life. She lived 6 weeks. Sorry. The day she died was the first day she smiled, and she smiled the whole day." Oh, sorry. Jeez. Sorry. "My mom put her down for a nap, and a little while later was putting laundry away in her room, and she looked over and saw that Lolly was pale. She picked her up, and she did every life-saving measure she could. But Lolly was already gone. The paramedics came, and they reassured my mom. 'We can tell she's been very well taken care of,' they told her. Lolly had an autopsy performed, and they concluded that she had died of a coarctation of the aorta, which is a heart defect." Megan held a live stream around June 9th, 2024, which is a significant date. As most of you will know, that June 9th, 2020 was the day that Tylee and JJ's remains were found. So Megan held a live around June 9th, 2024, and claimed many lies in this live. She stated that the family story was that Lolly died of SIDS, and that she died under suspicious circumstances, and that responsible Megan, in quotation marks, reported it to the FBI. She also fabricated that my mother told her that she wrote an article for Reader's Digest to share her experience of losing a baby to SIDS. None of that ever happened. It's all made up. She later changed it to her Patreon channel so she could profit more off the lies. Losing Lolly was the single most devastating moment of my mother's life at that time. She planned every detail of Lolly's funeral and burial services, as it was very important in her grieving process. From my earliest memories, I remember my mother talking about Lolly and telling me I had a sister in heaven and we would go as a family to visit her grave. Lolly was always a part of our family because she was so loved. My mother has never once believed in reincarnation or multiple probations. My mom has never told Lori that she was Lolly incarnated, ever. That is a gross, cruel, disgusting, horrific, insensitive, heartless thing to say. To dredge up my mom's most painful moments, lie about them, then criticize her for them, and then try to use them to blame her for what Lori did is ... I'm not even going to try to put a word to it because hurtful doesn't begin to cover it. Disgusting doesn't begin to cover it. Defamation doesn't begin to cover it. There isn't a word that covers that. The whole thing is unconscionable that she could say such things without any feeling in her heart whatsoever, when our family, specifically my mother, has shown her nothing but undeserved kindness. Kirsten's lies are just as bad as Megan's. They are both disgusting attention seekers. Number 2, my sister Stacey was sick for many years. She had complications with type 1 diabetes and went to multiple doctors that didn't know how to help her. She was evaluated for eating disorders in the process, and it was dismissed early on because that was not what was going on with her. She was in and out of hospitals for years. She suffered severe neuropathy in her legs, and she had gastroparesis for a period of time, among other issues. She did have some depression and anxiety about her long-term illness. But she was loved more than anything. I watched my parents do everything in their power to save her life. They could not bear to lose another precious daughter. They were devastated when doctors told them Stacey was dying and they couldn't help her. We did finally find a doctor that had seen a case like hers before. She had seen 2 teenage girls and they had both died. But this doctor accepted Stacey as a patient and treated her symptoms the best she could. Michelle DeMattis, Kirsten is Megan's partner in crime over on the Ex-Mormon Snark. Stacey was never told she was a burden. She was never told it was her time to die. Never. Every moment with her was cherished, and we feel it is a gift that we had as much time with her as we did. Megan saying that her dad made Stacey's hospice arrangements is a big fat lie. I was in the room when my parents, who are next of kin and the financially responsible party, made those arrangements. I watched my parents make all of Stacey's funeral arrangements. Just like with Lolly, planning all of that for Stacey was important to the grieving process. I went shopping with my mom for Stacey's burial outfit. Every detail of her life and death was important to us. There was nothing suspicious about her death. It was a blessing we had her as long as we did. We still live with that heavy loss daily. I pretty much had decided I was done with Megan when she had hijacked my sister's funeral. She was asked to give the closing prayer and, of course, took the opportunity to be the center of attention and gave a little speech and made it all about herself. Excuse me. Megan said in an interview it was about Stacey committing suicide. That was not what she talked about at all. I saw Megan a few more times after that and was always cordial, but never really wanted to try to have a real relationship with her ever again. By the way, do you know how many times Megan called to check on Stacey or to ask what was going on with her in all the years that she was sick? You guessed it, 0. Megan didn't have the first clue or care what was going on with Stacey's illness. In all of the years she was sick, even when she did come to my parents' house in San Antonio when Stacey was there, she never sat down and said, "Hey, Stacey, how are you feeling? What is it that you have?" Nothing. She never even asked. Nothing. Not one time. Because Megan is only concerned about Megan. She has no clue what Stacey went through, what my parents went through, what any of us went through. Nor has she ever cared. She is getting all of her information from stupid divorce documents that she doesn't have any first-hand clue. Number 3. There are multiple reasons why I have not dealt with Megan publicly. One of the main reasons is that I hate giving her the attention because I know that's what she wants. She loves when people talk about her, especially family members, because then it is fodder for more content that she can respond to, and it makes her relevant in her mind. But to be clear, she is absolutely not relevant to anything in this case. The other main reason is that I have been in survival mode the last several years, trying to survive the horrific circumstances that I am faced with every day. The last thing I want to do is spend more time thinking about Megan. To watch hours upon hours of Megan's bullcrap to stop and screenshot or timestamp to prove or disprove her made up stuff is a waste of my time. It is a waste of everyone's time. I can't stop people if that's what they want to listen to or believe. People believing everything Megan has said does not hurt as much as losing Tylee and JJ. Nothing even comes close. Me can talk about this all day long because she doesn't have any personal feelings to overcome or deal with. She has some fake tears here and there, but she has no relationship with anyone in our family for over 25 years. We saw her a handful of times growing up. To anyone trying to take advice from Megan, good luck. You're going to need it because the girl has zero empathy. That is why she can stay so calm and appear so reasonable. She doesn't get anxious or nervous about being called out. She doesn't have remorse or regret or care about the damage she causes. She doesn't know what it means to really care about someone and to be there for them when they are going through hardship. She only knows some therapeutic and buzzwords so she can accept your praise and dollars. P.S. We were only bridesmaids out of family obligation and pity. Actually, Lori had pity on her and convinced me to do it because Megan had no friends and it was a miserable experience. So, no surprise there. P.S. Plus, Megan lived with Adam and Lori for less than 2 weeks. She never had a job. There was a guy named Anthony that asked Lori out, and Lori said no, and Megan offered to go out with him. Lori came home from her apprenticeship to change for her other job and was locked out of her room because Megan was locked in there with Anthony, getting drunk and having sex. Adam and Lori worried that she would get pregnant on their watch, in quotation marks, and that her parents would blame them and they wanted her out. Her parents came to get her, and it was a whole dramatic event that I witnessed. She was never taken to the bus station. P.S. I've seen her as a mother, and I feel very sorry for her dog. Okay, so it was more than 3 things, but at least it wasn't the 300 it could have been. Last thing. Her hijacking Tylee and JJ's memorial and turning it into the crappy Megan Connor concert was beyond sickening. I don't care if she was asked to sing. She should have said it wasn't her place. It is a sad, pathetic thing to watch a girl so desperate that she has to ride the coattails of her murderous cousin for any recognition. My beef with Megan has nothing to do with her religious convictions and everything to do with her lack of character. The story of the boy who cried wolf could have been written about Megan, but the title would have to be changed to The Girl Who Cried Relevant. P.S. I wanted to add something about Stacy. Her health went through ups and downs. Before she passed, she had been on an upswing. She had been feeling and functioning better. She was all set to start a new job that she was excited about while we were in Hawaii. Otherwise, she would have come with us. She was going to work for a friend's company, and the friend was willing to let her schedule be flexible around her health issues. I wanted to clarify that point because I think some people are under the impression that we left when she wasn't able to care for herself. Alex was never her caretaker. Stacy was very independent unless she was really, really down, and then it was always my parents there helping her. When we got to Hawaii, my parents were on the phone nonstop talking to doctors and trying to figure out her condition. Then they were making arrangements for hospice, and then they talked to the airlines and got us on the first flight where we could fly back together. The end. Yeah, so sorry, Kresha, I'm not sure what you're saying. I think I missed the first part. Sorry, Kresha, am I having... Sorry, to be a wet blanket. Okay, so Kresha says, sorry to be a wet blanket, but she never includes Charles as a loss, and that is always hurt. Okay, well, that's fair. I think that's fair. But yeah, I feel like that was, I don't know. I mean, I don't know Summer personally, any more than I know Megan personally, any more than I know any of the people in that story personally. I am just kind of, interpreting things through my own, lenses, obviously. I mean, I think that's what we all do. And my feeling is that in that email, there was more sincerity in that email than I have ever seen come from Megan in any circumstance. Um, and I have seen Megan lie, just bald face lie about Christina for her own benefit. So, um, I have evidence of that myself. So I am inclined more towards believing that she has lied about all of this stuff. Um, so yeah, I wanted to share that. I'm not sure. Our Summer is here. Hi, Summer. I'm glad you could make it. Oh, I didn't know you were here. God, now I feel like I'm. I have never been quite so nervous to do a live. I have to say, I feel that there's a great responsibility to representing this fairly, and I am. While I'm honored to have been given the opportunity, I also feel very much that. Yeah, I get that, Kelly Cal. I see that now. Kresha and Summer are having a discussion. So great. That's great. I am glad that's happening. Yeah. So um, that's just to start off with. And so then the plan was to share the video of what do you call, of those two, So I'm going to remove that one. I'm going to add this picture. So this is Megan and her husband Heath. I'm not sure what year this was, but Megan looks pretty young. They're standing in front of their Christmas tree. I have no knowledge of him as a person at all, so I just blurred his face. Hi, Mindy Caldwell. Yeah, Megan's stories are really something. I have been listening to a lot of Megan lately, and my God, it is extremely, extremely interesting in terms of, you could get an entire sociology degree out of this one person, I think, honestly. Yeah, so I wanted to share that picture. And then this picture, which is the video that Summer mentioned, where she where she claims that that Janice wrote an article for Reader's Digest about Lolly dying of SIDS, and it's on her. I believe it's on her Patreon. You can't see it unless you want to pay money, and which I do not. So, but you can tell from the Death in the Family, the truth about baby Lolly. Like Megan Connor is gonna offer us all the truth about it. It's pretty disgusting. So that's another. That's a screenshot that Summer shared with me. So I just wanted to share those. And then I'm gonna add this one back. Hang on, let me remove this. Put this back and share this tab instead. So, as far as I can make out, this is the first interview of Megan by Lauren that took place, and the date is sorry, oops. The date was April 24th, 2023. So, yeah, okay, so I'm just going to look at the chat a bit, actually, yeah. Yeah, I mean, you guys all saw that picture of Janice and baby and Lolly. Hey, I mean, my God, just the cruelty is unbelievable. Oh, that's good. Trisha says I was at the memorial and find it of note that I can't recall even one of Megan's songs. So there's that. The only song of Megan's that I know is the "Fuck You" song, and it was memorable just for its twee cringiness, basically. Carolyn Breeden, Megan sang 5 songs at the memorial. Oh God, she sang 5 songs. You know, this is the thing, right? So she made herself the center of attention at Stacy's memorial. She made herself the center of attention at Tylee and JJ's memorial. She made herself the center of attention by doing her statement about the sentencing of Lori for her first trial. And then she made herself the center of attention by doing her statement, her, you know, the one that we talked about last time, her character reference, where she addressed Judge Boreski. And then she's got one on her Mormon Snark channel where she does my statement about leaving the church. So these are all, to me, evidence of a pattern of attention-seeking behavior that, and inserting herself in situations that, you know, I mean, John Dehlin runs his whole podcast, the Mormon Stories podcast, to get people's stories because they're trying to share the stories of people leaving the church in order to encourage other people to, you know, to give credence to their own questions and their own whatever. But, you know, Megan has an entire channel to do that on, right? And that's, most people come on to the Mormon Stories podcast as a guest, whereas Megan's whole life is telling her story, you know, or her version of the story. Yeah, I didn't think her singing was that great, but then I was like, I don't know, what do I know about like technical singing, you know? I tend to love people, the singing voices of people like, you know, Keith Richards, who can't sing, and or Neil Young, right? People who can't sing on key at all. So what do I know? But I mean, I find Megan off-putting in every way, so it would be difficult for me to find. I can't imagine I would find any music that she might come up with very appealing. So anyway, here we go. Let's just watch this video. It is extremely mind-numbing. Please, public service announcement, make sure that you are sitting down before we start, because the Megan has this tendency to bore people into a coma, and we don't want anybody falling over and cracking their head on their glass coffee tables or anything like that. So make sure you're seated, and or, you know, you're with a trusted friend, and that the mute button is within reach. If you feel yourself starting to fade, you can quickly mute. So anyway, carrying on, here we go. Hi, Stuff by the Seashore, Carolina Hurtado. Hey, Christina Mack, yay, you're here. Here we go.
I am with Megan Connor. Megan is
the somber music. Oh my God. Okay, I have to speed it up already because I'm already just about ready to commit a felony. So here we go. We're 6 seconds in, and I'm ready to commit a felony to escape the boring Lauren.
Someone really important when it comes to the Lori Vallow Daybell case and trial happening right now in Boise, Idaho. She is the first relative that's not Lori's immediate family to come forward to share her experience growing up with Lori Vallow. Megan is Lori Vallow's cousin, and we are so glad to have you here with us. We know that this is a really big deal for you, Megan, also coming forward, that this is something you've been contemplating for a very long time.
Seriously, don't they just look like the Weird Sisters? Like, they're just so creepy. The hairstyle is similar. The colors almost, you know, it's a different, maybe a slightly different shade from each other. Their backgrounds are kind of the same. They genuinely look like that picture that I put on the thumbnail of like these creepy Addams Family types. Yes.
So thank you
So,
from
Jinx.
us at Hidden True Crime for trusting us with your story. First off, Megan, why don't you share with us how you are related to the Cox family, to Lori Vallow, and your relationship with her growing up?
So my dad is one of Janice's younger brothers. And so Lori and I are first cousins. Janice and Barry are my aunt and uncle. And we were relatively close growing up. We spent a lot of time in the summers together. And Lori is the closest in age to me of the cousin group. There were 21 of us total cousins. And so when we would spend time together, it was Lori and I that would hang out together. And then when we got a little older to be teenagers, Summer joined us as well. It
was Lori and me. Just saying. I like to pick Megan apart because she annoys me and she thinks that her grammar is superlatively good and it's not. She says her and I a lot when it should be she and I, and she says Lori and I when it should be Lori and me. Hi, Amy Boston. Thank you for buying a membership. I appreciate that.
Just a little bit younger than me, so it was kind of the three of us together. And we spent a lot of time together in the summers. And then I lived with Lori for a short time when I first moved to Texas. And after that, when Janice and Barry lived in San Antonio, we did a lot of family events together for many years while they were still living here.
Yeah, so it seems like this is just not true, right? Based on everything that we have heard from other family members, it's basically not true that she has this kind of inside knowledge that she claims. So if any people are just arriving at the beginning of this video, this live stream, I read a statement from Lori's sister Summer, who was also here with us in the chat, clarifying some of the things that Megan is going to talk about here.
Your cousins, you grew up together, you were close.
Yeah.
And it sounds like
Nope, they weren't. Seems like nope would have been the correct answer to that question. Nope. And again, I'm really curious how much vetting Lauren did of any of this, or did she just like bite Megan's hand off when she heard from her?
Janice's family is close also. Is Janice still in touch with your dad, brother? Are they still close today?
No.
No.
I think definitely some of the circumstances surrounding Lori's case and everything have definitely polarized our family into people who
tell total complete lies about them and people who want the people telling total complete lies about them to shut the fuck up and go away. That's my take on that polarity.
Believe and support what Lori's doing and those who don't. I haven't spoken to most of that part of the family for quite some time. And there are some other family dynamics that are just really unhealthy and have made it really impossible for us to stay in touch.
Okay. And when you say support Lori with all she's done, nobody's supporting her due to the crimes, are they? Or do you mean the trial? Or
not right now, but when all of this first started happening and when Charles was killed, there was almost an immediate polarization of those who believed that it was self-defense and those who did not. And so that's kind of what I'm talking about.
Again, so she likes to characterize the Cox family as all being so stuck inside this family system that none of them are able to think for themselves. And if you recall, we played a couple of videos ago, we played the phone call that Adam had with the oh god, I forgot all the police departments. I get lost, but he spoke over the phone to a detective, and he was very clearly he was very clear about not being confused about what had happened, or that Lori, or not being so stuck inside the family system that he couldn't think outside the box. He was very clear that he felt that Lori was involved, and he says very plainly, they shot him, they killed Charles. He says it very, very clearly. So again, she tries to characterize people in ways that make her look like she is able to see everything so clearly from her more objective viewpoint, and it's bullshit. It's absolute bullshit. Hi, Dental Lori, glad you got back.
About is that created this schism in our family, and there were very few of us who were on the side of believing that it was not self-defense, and it definitely created a rift where it was almost not there. It was unproductive to have a conversation with anybody who was on the opposite side of you.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that. That makes, yeah, I can't imagine. So just the moment Charles was killed, there was a polarization, a family rift, sides being taken, in other words.
Oh God, Lauren, just the way she talks, that jerky little can't speak a whole sentence all at once. She has to stop between each few words. It's so, I don't know if that's how her brain works, if there's like if she's experiencing some kind of a glitch, but my God, it's hard to listen to.
This might be a loaded question right now, but why are you choosing to do this interview?
Well, I have stayed as much as I could away from all of the media coverage and everything. It's been pretty impossible to do that, but I've tried to keep myself isolated and have good boundaries around that because it just hasn't been good for my mental health. It's been really.
I would suggest personally that that's a lie. I think she's probably been devouring it all and trying to, and having her little wheels spinning in her little brain, trying to figure out what she can do to make it work for her.
Really taxing, and I feel like it prolongs the grieving process. And so I have tried really hard not to get embroiled in it. But every once in a while, I will get texts from family members, and I especially will get texts from friends of mine who know that I'm related to Lori, asking me if I've seen this or that interview. And a short time ago, I got a couple of texts from a family member who sent me some links to some of the interviews. And there was one in particular that really stuck out to me. It was the interview between Summer and the prosecutor, Rob Wood, I think it was.
And that was a conversation. Yeah, that they were talking back and forth, and it was recorded, I believe, by Summer's attorney. Yes.
Right. And in that conversation, the prosecutor was saying things like that he believed that Lori had been duped, and he really didn't believe that there was malicious intent and things like that. I don't remember exactly. I just remember thinking to myself, this is wrong. This is not right. There's no way that somebody could have manipulated Lori to that extent, because she was the manipulator. She was the one who was always in control and in charge.
Yeah, again, like, it's so hard to believe anything she says because the projection, we've seen how she projects everything, right, onto people. And again, I don't know, I haven't heard that interview, so I am not able to comment on the content of it at all. But I would like to say that, I mean, Lori, she's going to sit here and talk about Lori being a manipulator and yet not give Lori's family members any, room for trying to cope with that situation in the moment, right? Like, I mean, Lori primed her family to think that Charles was cheating on her, that he was abusive to her, that he was, all of these things. So there was already a narrative in place, right? She begged and hounded to be interviewed. Yeah, I am not surprised. I understand from Mindy Caldwell that she also, she was the one who was putting herself out there to be interviewed by Mormon Stories podcast as well. So just to say, this whole business of dumping on Lori's family for initially supporting her, my guess is that if everybody in Lori's family had, from the word go, been not on Lori's side, she would have criticized them for that, right? She would have gone, well, they never supported each other in that family, right? Like, I mean, Megan is going to find a way to talk shit about these people so that she can lay claim to the narrative and to be the one that can be the truth teller and can, help everyone, literally everyone, to understand how this happened and how to stop it from ever happening again. She has literally this kind of grandiose vision of herself, right, as this enormous truth teller who's going to come in and cut through all of the dross and all of the confusion and all of the anger and grief and sorrow and craziness with her clear narrative arc of exactly what happened and how she saw the whole thing coming, but failed to do anything about it. Jenny Spalley Flat says Megan showed up at the end of Lori's trial and nobody knew who she was. So, yeah. Good. I'm glad to hear that. I think that's great. That's basically what she deserves. On her, I was looking on her Patreon, and she's over there. She's got my statement about CrimeCon. Like, oh my gosh, she's so exhausted. You can't watch any of it because you have to pay money, and you would, who's going to pay money to hear what Megan's statement about CrimeCon is?
And thinking about the Cox family structure with Barry as definitely the patriarch of the family, there was always sort of this undercurrent of Lori getting what she wanted. And I think probably Barry would disagree with this, but I think that there was a lot that Lori did to control the family system as well.
Okay, thank you. She was in charge, in other words, whether people could see it or not.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of behind the scenes manipulation, suggestion, and if everybody keeps Lori happy, then everything will go smoothly. And when she's unhappy, it disrupts everything. And so it's like almost easier to placate her, do what she wants, than it is to deal with the fallout of her not getting what she wants.
So then take me back then to I don't know whether this is childhood or growing up or teenagehood. Take me back to maybe explaining a little bit about what you saw in this family system or in this family growing up, and if that includes your family or they're separate.
Yeah, so in my family of origin, my mom's side of the family.
I mean, I think that Lauren's basically a terrible interviewer. Her speaking style is so off-putting, but I will give her credit as far as like compared with somebody like Trisha. At least Lauren is aware that you need to ask questions to keep the interview moving along, right? Megan has kind of a tendency to monologue. She doesn't necessarily need anybody to interview her because she's happy to just spew nonstop. But just a comment about Lauren's style. There's something about Lauren that just makes me deeply, deeply uncomfortable. And I think it must be that that lack of compassion that's there, right? There's something so weird and off-putting about her.
Family is very straight-laced, very traditional Mormon, very strictly adhering to the Mormon lifestyle, the Mormon culture. And in Janice and Barry's family, we always perceived them to be like they were like the fun family. They were the Disneyland family, and they had a pool, they had money. We'd go to visit them in California, and we'd go to the beach, and we'd go to Disneyland, and things like that. So it was, as a young child growing up, it was like that was the place we wanted to be. Those were the cousins we wanted to be with, and we wanted to.
Right. So from what I can understand, right, and from what Summer said, like they saw them a couple of times in the summer over their childhood kind of thing. But Megan parlays that into we spent summers with the Coxes, right? And that they were the California Cox, the California part of the family or whatever, and that this was this ongoing, regular, all the holidays, all the summer vacations, every, all the important family gatherings, that both families were kind of always together. And that is not how it was, according to the Cox family.
Hang out there as much as possible. As a teenager, it started to become pretty apparent that things were not healthy and safe in that family. And I say that now with a lot of perspective. Back then as a teenager, I thought it was normal. There was, almost everything about my family growing up was not healthy emotionally, but it was all I knew. And so I didn't really know. I didn't know a lot of these things were unhealthy, but I do remember visiting the Coxes as a 13-year-old and observing for the first time what I felt to be like, this is very strange. This is not normal. But I didn't really have a frame of reference to put that in and to understand why it wasn't normal.
That's interesting because she was apparently sex trafficked for several years, and yet she has no frame of reference for the things that, the kind of the stuff that she's about to talk about and frame as this all this inappropriate sexuality going on that she had no frame of reference for because she was so innocent. And yet, right, she has written a book about how she was sex trafficked between the ages of 7 and 11 or something like that. And I do believe that one would come to some knowledge about the forbidden subject. No?
Normal, I just knew it didn't feel right.
Do you remember what that was? Can you take us back to that experience?
Yeah, it was, we, as a family, my family would go, and we lived in South Dakota at the time, and we would travel to Utah, visit my mom's family for a week, and then we'd go stay for 2 weeks in California and then go back. So during that 2-week period, we would stay, with various people, and it ended up that my older brother and I stayed with the Coxes. My parents stayed with our step grandfather who lived one street over with our younger siblings. And so it was the two of us older kids. And I remember having meals with them, and there was a lot of arguing that would go on. Sometimes Barry and Janice would leave the table and go away and argue and then come back. When they were arguing, there was a lot of volatility.
Oh my God, how awful. They would leave the table to have their argument and then come back. How could they even call themselves parents?
I was not used to hearing that kind of yelling and screaming that went on. We were sitting eating dinner one night, and Janice had her plate of food, and she kept taking bites, and she would chew up the bite and then spit it back out on the plate.
Yeah, I just think this is probably a lie. I just think this is a lie. And I can't, they shock the conscience, these people. And I am shocked down to my toes that she feels comfortable coming out and being like, I am going to give up all the family secrets and they're all ugly. And I'm going to tell all of them. Like, first of all, we know she's a terrible liar. So you basically can't believe any of what she says. And her insights seem to be based on lies. So again, like, instead of clarifying anything, she's really just muddying the waters. And she's also, like, the whole way that she talks about her involvement with the Cox family is as though she was being victimized the entire time she was in their company, right? And yet I don't believe that that's true. And so in a way, like, it's this exploitation of actual victims, right? People who were victimized by other family members. She's not a victim of the Cox family, right? It's bullshit. But that's the language that she used, and that's how she projects herself. And Summer says the shaving story never happened, but I think that's what she's leading into.
And I remember thinking that was so odd. And somebody commented on it, like, what are you doing? And I can't remember if it was my brother or one of her kids. And she said, I don't really need to swallow the food. I just need to taste it. And I just thought that was so odd. And I've thought about that so many times over the years when I think about, like, my own body image struggles and all that kind of stuff about, like, well, maybe I don't need to taste the food or swallow the food. Maybe I just need to taste it like Janice used to do,
Wow.
But one thing in particular that really struck me that time of visiting that time was that Lori and Summer and I were in the bathroom getting ready to go swimming. And getting ready was like a big deal around their house. They spent hours and hours getting ready. It was like a big deal, do the hair, do the makeup. And I hadn't experienced that in my family of origin. It was like, we brush our hair, we go, but for them, it was like getting ready was a really big deal. So we're getting ready to go swimming. And, we all have our swimming suits on, and, Lori's sort of like crimping her hair and stuff. And she looks over at me and she goes, oh, you need to shave your pubes. And I was like, what? I was, 13 for the first time, not realizing that my swimsuit didn't cover everything,
Right.
So one of the things that's interesting to me about this story is that, according to me, it happened. According to Summer, it didn't. Based on everything I know about both of these people, I would tend to believe Summer. But even if it did happen, even if an older cousin, even if you had that little moment of, coming of age with an older cousin explaining to you about, like, even if it did happen, so what? Like, she makes it seem like, again, right? She's positioning herself as being victimized by learning the things that we all learn at some point in our lives, right? Yeah, I believe Summer too. Everybody's over here saying, I totally believe Summer. I totally believe Summer. I mean, I don't understand why anybody believes anything that Megan says. She is so obviously lying, but plenty of people do. So it can be hard I find it difficult to imagine people that can't see the difference in the very obvious sincerity of Summer and the very obvious bullshitting of Megan. They seem very, very clear to me, but I get it that not everybody is able to see that. So, that's why we have to be here doing all this. And as like Summer said in her statement, right, it's a lot of effort to untangle. Like, for every 1 minute that Megan spends telling a lie, it takes 10 minutes to refute and unpack that lie, right? It's exhausting. And this is why people like Megan often win, right? Because people just, they want their life back, right? They don't want to be spending their time. dealing with this, right? They just wear you down with their fire hose of lies. It's literally a part of the propagandist's handbook, right? Something like Joseph Goebbels knew this very well. A fire hose of lies takes, it doesn't take very long to get the lies out there. It takes so long to refute them and get the information that the lies are not. Like, that's how propaganda works. And that's exactly, Megan does it. I don't think that she's consciously like, I'm going to do a fire hose of lies so it takes them so long to refute all my lies. But I do believe that that's what's happening. And she just does it naturally because, as people have said, she probably suffers from mythomania.
Right. And she goes, we can help you with that. We can do that. It's fine. Just don't shave all of it or nobody will want to fuck you.
She actually said that word. She said that.
Yes.
Again, like, I mean, I guess this is supposed to be more and bigger because it's the LDS community, but like, we all had to learn the word fuck at some point, and we all had to learn what it meant, and we all have had those moments, and we all, survived the shock of the salaciousness of being a young kid and learning about the birds and the bees, right? And yet Megan, these two are acting as though this is some big, she actually said that word. Like, oh my God. Yeah, right. And now she's got her fuck song and her filthy fingernails and everything. It's so ridiculous. And yet, I mean, I guess I am not Mormon, and I was not raised in a community that is that sheltered and that scripted. I was allowed to think critically a little bit more. And I know that has some impact on, how shocked you might be to hear the F word at the age of 13. But I mean, none of this strikes me as anything particularly out of the ordinary for a childhood story. So, yeah.
And I remember just being so...
Even though it probably very much didn't even happen, as some are saying, it didn't happen. So she's making up a salacious story that isn't even all that salacious, honestly.
Incredibly shocked because, first of all, I don't think I'd ever really heard that word before,
Yeah.
And not only that, but all of the ramifications started spinning through my brain of like, how...
13 years old, been sex trafficked for 4 years, and she's never heard the F word before. Doesn't even know what it means. I mean, I have my own F word origin story. The first time I heard the F word, I was in grade 3. I think I was about 8. And somebody in my class told somebody else in my class to go fuck a tree. And I didn't know what the F word, I didn't know what it meant. So I was like I remember it specifically because I didn't know what the word meant, and I couldn't figure out what he was obviously mad. You know what I mean? Like that whole thing. So I think most of us go through that, and I remember it, but I was not traumatized by it. Spare me.
How do you know what that is? And I thought you were supposed to wait till you got married. So have you done that already? How do you know that somebody won't want to have sex with you? How do you know that that's a component? And how does the hygiene aspect of it figure in? Like, my mind was just spinning. I had no idea what to think about that or how to frame it.
Even though she'd been sex trafficked for 4 years by this time. So interesting.
Or anything, but the two of them, Lori and Summer, were just continuing to get ready like it was no big deal. And I was kind of just like frozen in that moment, not knowing how to frame all of that stuff. And then we just went on and went to the pool like it was no big deal. And so those kind of comments during that visit, it was the first time that I had spent overnight with them, I think, that I can remember. And it was the first time that I'd been there with their family without my parents present. And I think that was the big changing factor.
So you were 13. How old would,
Exactly.
let's get context, Lori be, and how old would Summer have been?
So Lori is about 18 months older than I am, and Summer is about a year younger than I am.
Okay. Yeah. Like, so about 13, 14. Yeah. That is startling, especially for...
I feel like we need to have like a Sunday night live chat where everybody tells their F word origin story. Like, it's the most ordinary thing in the world to have your older cousin or your older sister or your friend's older sister or somebody whip out a razor and go, hey, you got to shave your pubes. It's the most ordinary thing literally in the world. They make coming of age Bildungsroman stories about this kind of stuff, right? My American Cousin, all those movies, like, come off it, you two.
Or, an LDS family, and Lori we know is really religious. And you explained that a little bit in your LDS upbringing. I assume that you said you don't have sex before you're married. You're taught about the law of chastity. That is shocking to hear. Did they talk about religion in their family? Because Lori does seem to be fairly religious. Was this Barry seems to talk about religion a lot? Was this something that was discussed at the Cox household?
Yeah, I mean, Barry's favorite thing to do is to pontificate, or at least was. I haven't had a lot of contact with them in many years, but I can't imagine that aspect of his personality has changed much. His prayers were always very, very long and wordy. He loved to quote scripture all the time. He loved to.
Oh, I think that's the first time I've seen that picture. He's quite handsome. He's somewhere. Your dad.
Sort of hold the family hostage with his pontificating about whatever religious topic he felt like talking about, and also news of the day or anything like that. He loved to have a commentary on that. He wanted everybody to know what his opinion was and that it was rooted in scriptural doctrine. And he was just very adamant about using scripture to talk about his opinions on everything.
Okay.
Is that Lori? I know that Megan talks about her as being infinitely huggable when she was younger.
So there is sort of this contradiction.
Janice is so cute, eh? She reminds me of Goldie Hawn.
Going on already at a young age. This sort of a household that's very sexual with children while also religious.
Yeah, and it was shocking to me mainly from the standpoint that my parents.
Thank you, Crusher. She looks a lot like Lori, eh? That was Tylee. Thank you, Crusher.
Never talked about sex, like not ever. I don't think I remember ever hearing them say the word sex until I was an adult. And it was always, I think my parents really left it up to the church leaders to make sure that we knew what we were supposed to do and not do. But in the Cox household, it was like a very frequent topic of conversation about what's appropriate and what's not appropriate from the standpoint of like what the doctrine teaches. But then it seemed to be very contradictory to what they actually said and did. So the kids were very open about telling me and my brother that after church on Sunday, that his parents would just go take a nap. And that meant they were going to go have sex. And the kids would talk about it, about how vocal they were or about, what they thought was going on. And that was very foreign to me. That was something that
Again, I just think this is probably lies. And also, I mean, being sex positive isn't exactly the worst thing in the world to my mind. And there's nothing that she has said so far that leads me to think that there was anything going on, in particular in front of her that would be traumatizing. I mean, it's, sure, if you're at somebody's house where people are sex positive or they're more comfortable with their bodies and you come from a family where everybody's very uptight, sure, those things might be a little salacious, but I mean, this is hardly traumatic stuff. For God's sake.
I had no frame of reference for whatsoever. And they would talk about which of their friends were having sex and, what kids in the church were having sex and all that kind of stuff. So it was really overwhelming for me to hear all of that as a 13, 14-year-old kid.
Yeah. So you were the same age. So this was.
She's literally like, she has already by this time. When is this? When did I say this was? April 24th, 2023. Her book is already a thing, right? Her walking through the fire to get here and all of her deep healing that she did with the EMDR, so she's all perfect now, right? So it's not like like if it was real, I feel like that would play some role in her memories of all of this, right? That she wouldn't be shocked down to the tips of her toes by the sound of people having sex. Just a guess.
Staying there that year for 2 weeks with the Cox family in California. What else? Do you have any other stories from that moment or that time?
Not.
Lauren's like a gold digger for stories. She's digging for the stories. She often doesn't give Megan a chance to even kind of process the story that she's telling. Not that she needs to, because it's a lie, but it's very clear that Lauren's just like, and next, and what else, and what else, and what else have you got, what else have you got, anything else, anything else, anything else. She's just this is the whole reason why I was kind of one of those people who was mostly put off of the true crime genre for a long time, because it felt very rubbernecky and very salacious to me, a lot of it. And kind of I don't feel like any of what Megan is attempting to do here, even if she was doing it in good faith, I'm not sure exactly how helpful any of that is to the community anyway, right? I mean, I'm not sure that the nitty-gritty details of the lives of people who are still trying to deal with the things that happened in their own family being spread around publicly is healing enough for the community to make it worthwhile in terms of what you're doing to the surviving members of this family by doing this shit, right? It just is, there's no other way to look at this than self-serving on the behalf of both of these weird sisters here.
Not that particular time, but there were two more times that my brother and I went to visit the Coxes without our parents. And one of those times, Janice and Barry were away they were either in Hawaii or Las Vegas, I don't remember which, but Stacy was in charge. And there were a lot of kind of crazy shenanigans that happened during that visit because there were no parents.
Can you share what those crazy shenanigans are?
Sorry, I was away for a second there. What a beautiful picture of Stacy that was. She was very pretty, Summer.
Do you want to keep that private, or?
There was just a lot of, there was a lot of the typical stuff that we would do, like going to theme parks and going to water parks and stuff like that.
Lauren, she doesn't want to keep anything private. Nothing.
I remember that Barry had given Stacy a bunch of money to pay for food and other things, and he had left strict instructions about us not driving his sports car, which of course that did not get followed. There were, some joyride situations. There was one instance in particular that was really disturbing to me where Lori was dating this guy and she wanted all of us to go out together to go mini golfing or whatever. And so she made sure that her boyfriend or the guy she was dating brought a friend along so that I would have somebody to be with. And, we did this kind of typical date thing where we went mini golfing, then we got something to eat. And then Lori wanted to go to this golf course so that
Kelly Kell says nothing is private to this woman. And yeah, that's absolutely true, right? She never met a boundary she couldn't cross.
She and her boyfriend could have some privacy. So it's late at night. There's no lights on. Nobody's around. She and her boyfriend went off into a corner somewhere. And I sort of had to struggle with this guy who had this expectation that, well, Lori and my friend are making out, so we should be making out too. And I was like very unhappy with that situation because
again, with these stories, right? Like these are all coming of age stories that all of us have been through, where some, it was, for me, it was my foster sister who was she was the leader in the relationship between the two of us. Obviously, right? I was there under sufferance. So obviously I had to do what she wanted to do. And these are the exact same stories. I have the exact same stories, right? It was just my foster sister, not my older cousin. See, it's all of this is totally normal.
I had never really had dating experience. I didn't really know how to deal with sort of a handsy person. I had no boundaries, and my family of origin growing up, it was like no was not acceptable. It was not acceptable to say no to things. And, I also had some past history of abuse. And so it was impossible for me to say no to this person. No, I don't want to do this, whatever. It was just what he wanted. And so that was really difficult for me. And then we all jumped in his Jeep to go drive Lori and me home after their makeout session was over. And we're driving down the street and he's like swerving in and out and he's being really reckless with the way he's driving. And it was one of those open Jeeps with, the doors and the roof were all off and everything. I felt very unsafe. And then we're driving down this residential street and they see a cat running across the road. And the guy who's driving the Jeep decides to hit the cat. And so he hits and kills this cat that's running across the street. And after he hits the cat, he sort of taps the brakes and slows down a little bit. And they look to make sure the cat's dead, and then he speeds off.
Wow.
And I was distraught. And I was looking over.
Again, so I don't exactly believe this story. I can believe that they were speeding and he was driving recklessly and that they went to play mini golf and that Megan was less experienced because she never was sex trafficked, because that was a lie in the first place. And that Lori didn't really care that much about Megan's comfort because she was more interested in the boy she was with. Again, all extremely normal coming of age stuff. Even the driving too fast in the car, even swerving at the cat. All of those things are things that could have happened to me very easily. I don't believe that they killed the cat. I just don't believe it. And she's going to try to tell this out and make it seem like this is the early version, right? She will have heard somewhere along the line, you know, that psychopaths start by being cruel to animals, and there are serial killers, right? That they start out by being cruel to animals and killing animals, and then they move on to killing people. And she has found a way to make some story that was partially true into a story of proof of Laurie's serial killer beginnings, because she didn't, you know, make a fuss about the dead cat, while Megan was, she was so upset by it. I mean, you know, I mean, this is a woman who can't handle the F word. So, you know, it all is just very twee, and I just don't believe it because she's such a liar. I just don't believe it. I just don't believe it.
We're at Lori, and she was just laughing and, you know, seemed to still be having the greatest time. And for me, everything in that moment just stopped, and I couldn't believe what was happening. And I wanted to go back and like see if the cat is okay, or I want to see if did it have a collar, was there an owner? You know, all of these thoughts are running through my head, and they're just still laughing and hanging out the sides of the Jeep. And you know, we turned the corner to go home, and I was sort of hyperventilating, and you know, Lori just didn't seem to be fazed by that at all. And I don't think she had any recognition that I was having a hard time with it. I think she just went on with it like it was normal. You know, that was just a thing that we did. And nobody ever talked about it again or brought it up or anything. But it was, you know, these few memories that I have of us spending time together, like they were not.
Nobody ever talked about it or brought it up again because it never fucking happened, would be my guess, right? I mean, my God. This is, I mean, how small and scared would you have to be to not say something in that situation? I mean, I don't know. She makes it sound like she's with this group of terrible ruffians who are out there committing crimes and being, you know, breaking all the laws of God and men, and she's just this virginal little thing in a white dress over here being traumatized, you know. And it just is fucking, it's just bullshit. This is just teenage stuff, right? Yeah, this is a girl who was sex trafficked for 4 years, and she didn't develop a single bit of thick skin to be able to handle even, you know, being told to shave her pubes. It's too much for her.
They were not happy memories, you know.
Yeah. You know, I want to go back to one story really quickly, and I don't want.
I mean, I can believe that. I can believe they weren't happy memories because I'm, you know, it doesn't, Megan is not likable. And if she is genuinely a psychopath, then she was probably like that when she was a kid too, right? A lot of psychopaths are born. And I mean, to me, it's very plausible that she just wasn't liked, right? That she was the like, oh, Megan's coming. Oh, do I have to? You know, like I can just see the sisters being like, really? Do we have to? Okay, fine. Like we have to play with her. We have to take her with us. That kind of thing. That I can see. But all of this, Megan it's the same as Lauren, right? They love to position themselves as the damsel in distress, right? With the terrible villains that are tying them to the railroad tracks and hiding behind the bush to watch as the train approaches, right? Like, it's just, she's so boring.
I want you to tell anything too personal, but one aspect of this.
That's a lie. She wants her to tell every single detail.
Story you told about, you know, getting ready to get in the pool. It was Lori, I believe, that said, "We'll help you." Did that happen? That they helped you, or were you able to just kind of ignore them and do your own thing after that?
Lauren's pushing for the details on the shaving of the pubic hair story because she's a investigative journalist. She's a professional journalist. Not sure you know that.
Sorry, that might be, if that's something you don't want to answer, you don't need to answer it.
No, that's okay. We kind of ignored it until the next time we were getting ready, and then Lori just handed me a razor and said, "You can just go in the shower."
Okay,
and that was it.
Okay, and I'm sorry that happened to you, such a young girl.
Yeah.
Lauren's sorry that happened to her. Christina Max says, Summer, I'm so sorry you had to deal with all this on top of the loss of your family members. You went through the unimaginable, and then these two weasels made you into a villain. Yeah, they're disgusting people. Into a villain that you are not. I'm so glad you're speaking out. Well, I certainly find Summer's voice a lot more soothing and informative, and not like nails on a blackboard to listen to. And the sentiments that I have read from her are much more genuine and believable than anything I've heard from either of these two. So yeah, I mean, I can very much understand why you don't want to give these people your time and energy. But I think that your voice would be, yeah, I think it's very welcome to people to be hearing from you.
You know, and I'm sure, so you're thinking as a young girl, as a teenager now, these things aren't normal, but, and one other thing too, I want to go back to, you said your family of origin, saying no wasn't an option. Well, I know that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with Lori. Can you share a little bit about that? Because your dad is also Janice's.
Summer says that's what's difficult in this situation. It's hard to disprove anything she says. It's just my word against hers. I mean, I think there is some truth to that. There's a she said element to it. But I also think that there's a Megan's reputation precedes her, as does yours. Right. And I think that a lot of people are open to hear what you have to say, Summer. That's my opinion, and I certainly am not pressuring you to do anything that is not in your very own best interests. It is just my opinion that from the get-go, you have more credibility than Megan. So it's not just she said.
Sibling, just trying to understand how you grew up too.
Yeah. Our family system was very much, you know, you do what you're told. You do not question. You're not really allowed to have an opinion, especially if it's one that's different from the parents. Any sort of raising of question or opinion was shut down as you're being argumentative, you're not being cooperative. You know, I'm not going to argue with you about this. Was kind of.
Those things may be true, but if you think back to the points that were made by Megan's immediate family member who wrote to me, she was apparently from a very early age extremely difficult to manage as a child, and was, you know, told lies. They called it fibbing, I guess, at the time, but there were, you know, often letters home from school about her fibbing. I believe I've heard about her getting in hot water with the church about lying and stuff too, right? And then that when they attempted to discipline her, she would just run away, and she would stay away long enough that by the time she came home, they were just so relieved that she was back that she wouldn't be punished anymore. So the way she characterizes this is very different from the way that it is characterized by a close family member of hers. So just saying, hers is not the only voice out there.
Kind of the MO of that. We really, and when I say we, I'm talking about me and my siblings, but I should just say what I felt. But what I felt was that I was not allowed to be who I really was. I had to fit into this neat little box that my parents wanted me to fit into. There was definitely a culture of control.
Right, because it doesn't sound like she did fit into any kind of a box. It sounds like she resisted that wholeheartedly from the get-go. So it's a good narrative for a good Mormon girl. But from what I understand, that's not reality of who she was, even as a child.
I think the only way.
And also, like, I mean, everybody wants to pretend that children are completely innocent all the time. And, you know, obviously children are not fully developed, so they cannot be held accountable in the same way that adults are held accountable. But the kind of disorders that people like Lauren and Megan have they start very young, right? I mean, psychopaths can be born. I believe this is true. And a lot of, you know, narcissists are often made, but there's also some evidence to suggest that some people are born narcissists. But whatever it is, it's happening early on, right? So you can already be a kid like Megan, who is telling lies all the time. Like, this family member of hers characterized her as Megan has always been pretty awful. And I can attest to the fact that my own sister was like that, right? My own sister was awful. And I believe, I mean, I was there. It's my first memory. She lured me out of a window. And I believe that she did it on purpose and was attempting to harm me. And she was nearly 7 and I was 2 at the time that happened. So, you know, just to say, Megan's versions of things has been refuted by what is, to my mind, a very believable, plausible version of events that refutes everything she says.
The way that my parents knew how to parent was by controlling us. And there was a lot of shame and a lot of secrecy. And the shame aspect of it was, you don't make mistakes. We don't talk about our mistakes. We want to put on this veneer of appearing to be the perfect little Mormon family. And if somebody makes a mistake, we're going to pretend like it never happened, or we're going to pretend like it was resolved, but we're not ever going to really talk about it. And you keep the secrets of the family because it's nobody else's business, and you are loyal to the family system. And that was part of the reason why interacting with the Coxes and our other family members there was no sort of understanding about boundaries or about this is not healthy for me, or I don't want to see this family member, or any of that kind of stuff. You were family. Mm-hmm. You stuck together no matter what.
To me, that's projection, right? I feel like she was forced on her cousins more than the other way around. That is honestly what I believe. And, Summer has said in her statement that the things that she's done to their family, it's none of us can even conceive of what it would take to be the kind of person to do to the Cox family what Megan has done. And Summer says what she's done to her own family is even worse, right? So just to say, this sounds like a lot of projection to me.
And whenever there were problematic behaviors in the family system, it was like, you just accept it. There's not an option of, oh, I'm not going to hug this family member because they make me feel uncomfortable. That was not an option. It was just, you accept everything that happens in the family system. You don't question it. And you just keep interacting with the family because that's what families do.
Again, that's very typical too, right? These are very typical family stories. Hug your grandma, right? And you're 5 and your grandma looks like, actually probably not your grandma, but maybe your great grandma, right? Old people can be kind of scary to small children or whatever, right? I know there are other reasons, and there are obviously, go hug Uncle John might have other, we all understand that. But again, she is presenting this as though she has been victimized by some deeply sick family system, when again, this is a very ordinary experience of being forced together with your visiting cousins, being made to kiss and hug your aunt who smells funny and your uncle who smokes cigars or whatever. She was wanting to imbue everything with this hidden, sinister thing because it helps with her narrative of, I can tell this whole narrative arc about this whole family, and it started way back then, right? It's so gross. It's so gross and self-serving.
Okay. I have to point out then, you mentioned loyalty to the family system, secrets in the family system. The Cox family is not in court as of right now watching their daughter's trial.
The Cox family is not on trial either, just to say. Lori's on trial, and these two would do well to remember it.
You haven't done any interviews since their original interview when the children were missing to state that Lori would never hurt her children. Is there going to be fallout for you doing this interview? I guess that's where I'm going.
Well, I've been...
people that are in the chat are getting irritated with her family system thing. And I think that's very valid to be annoyed by that, because family system is therapy speak, right? And it's a manipulation when it comes from somebody like Megan, because she's not a therapist. Right. And there is a modality, the family systems modality or whatever, where it's a type of therapy and an approach to trauma. But Megan is not a trauma therapist. She's not a therapist of any kind. She's not even a coach of any kind. She's just a liar. And that's the reason why so many people find it offensive. And I think it's instinctive, right? She's putting on airs. But it's not just putting on airs. It's part of her manipulation to get you to think that she's got the goods and that she understands what happened here and that she can explain it all and illuminate the whole situation for you, when really she's just a liar and a grifter, right? That's why we're here.
I would consider myself out of the family system. I've been out of the family system for a long time.
So again, I want to just make this straight. Again, Megan tries to position herself as the black sheep of the family, as the scapegoat, as the lightning rod for all the negative emotions, because she's the truth teller. And so she's outside of the family because you know, in that way. And I just don't think that's true. I think she has burned bridges with all of her family members, and there's no way back in now. And the narrative suits her, right? It suits her to be the truth teller, because the truth is she is on the outside of that family, and she put herself there by being a liar and a grifter and all of the things that we know her to be.
So I don't really anticipate that things are going to change that much for me. I went no contact with my parents several years ago to try and get some healing for myself, and our relationship is beginning to be repaired at this point, which is good. And I think I'm coming at it from a healthy standpoint now, where I realize what I do and do not want and need for my parents for the first.
Ki Lu says, didn't one of the Coxes say they don't believe her, she's a liar? I believe most of the Coxes have said so. And in fact, in this very live stream at the beginning, we read a letter from one of the Cox family members, Summer. I believe it's Summer Shiflett, but also your screen name is Summer Novell, so I'm a little confused by that. But who has very plainly said, these are the specific lies she told, and this is the specific truth that happened. So yes, the Cox family very much refutes Megan's stories.
Time in my life, as an adult, and there was a sort of polarization that happened on both sides of my family when I drew that boundary. And it was the polarization of those who think that Megan is crazy and is ungrateful and is a terrible daughter, and those who didn't, or who didn't have an opinion of it. So of all those 21 cousins, I think there are 2 who are out of the church, and maybe only a couple who are really out of the family system in a way that's healthy.
And when you say out of the church, you mean out of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And that was the way all of the 21 cousins were raised.
Yes.
Is that accurate?
And Megan's the one to judge all of the 21 cousins. She is the one to say who among them is healthy and who among them is unhealthy. Megan is the truth teller and the judge.
Okay. And you're one of those. You've left, right? Okay. And we'll talk about that in a little bit.
She's all healed up. She's one of the healthy ones. She did it in a healthy way. She's all healed up now. She went and got therapy for her trauma, although she never did any personality tests to be diagnosed with the personality disorders that she clearly has.
Unless you want to talk about it now. I mean,
no, we can cover that later.
Okay. Excuse me. So that helps me understand, the dynamic as a whole with all of the cousins, all of the siblings, was sort of this, could I say, enmeshed loyal family system? Is that fair to say? So across aunts and uncles, cousins.
Again, right? The brain trust with these 2, for fuck's sake. Lauren is just as desperate as Megan together, right? They are transacting in this manner here, where together they are creating this narrative that damns the entire Cox family based on some therapy speak that they picked up along the way. And Lauren, I'm sure, feels that she practically is a therapist because of Dr. John, and we know what Megan thinks of herself.
And on Janice's side of the family,
Mm-hmm.
But not everyone married, a Barry. How was the Cox family then? Oops, sorry. How was the Cox family then specifically unique to all of the cousins and aunts and uncles? How many siblings does Janice have then? Can I ask?
See, to me, this is oh my God, the fact that Lauren is so in on this and has so drunk the Kool-Aid and bought the whole thing. This is the first interview. And she is just desperate for every greasy detail that she can get her sick little hands on without having, as far as I can, how do you know who this person is? How do you know that she knows any of this? It is absolutely mind-numbing that these 2 are sitting here cooking up this narrative and thinking, God knows what Megan thinks. She must know she's lying. But I'm sure that Lauren thinks that she's got, Novella's my middle name. Thank you, Summer. I'm sure that Lauren thinks that she's really on to something here, right? Like, I mean, you get the sense that Lauren is like, oh, I am in here. I have got the scoop, right? She has swallowed it all, hook, line, and sinker. And she's completely unaware of the fact that, like, she's swallowed the whole thing without even investigating it at all. The investigative journalist. She hasn't investigated outside of her computer screen right in front of her face. And I don't even mean using the internet. I mean reading the text from Megan saying, hey, I want to come on your show and tell all my family secrets.
So she has 2 brothers and 1 sister.
Okay. 2 brothers, 1 sister. So 4 kids.
I get so.
Yeah. So when it comes to Janice and Barry's family, the Cox family, you shared a few experiences that were different. What else did you see or sort of observe, even looking back with newer eyes?
Well, I have to say, going back to the interview that Janice and Summer did, that's one of the few things that I did see. Somebody sent me this and said, have you seen this? Is this your aunt? And I have to say, watching that interview really turned my stomach. It was the first time since I've been through my healing process of realizing what's healthy and not healthy that I was sort of pushed back into that dynamic to where I could see so many things that were just red flag behaviors.
I'm sorry, Summer. It's so hard to listen to her. I can feel this like rock getting harder in my chest, and it's not me she's talking about. I can only imagine what your family has had to endure from this ghoul of a human.
And one of the worst things, and the thing that haunts me the most about that interview, is towards the end when the interviewer asks Janice, do you think Lori did this? This was before the kids had been found. And it was when people still largely had a lot of hope that they were alive. And the interviewer asked Janice, do you think she hurt the kids or harmed the kids? And Janice said, just very dismissively, I don't see it. Do you? And then she turned to Summer, and Summer said, no, I don't see it. And what I see in that.
Yeah, the deeply insightful Megan, what she sees is coercive control, right? She doesn't see 2 women who are faced with the most horrendous experience of their entire lives, trying to stay afloat, in the face of the unthinkable.
That behavior is Janice saying, this is what we believe. Turning to Summer for confirmation of, you're going to parrot what I said, and you don't get to have an opinion. And Summer parroting, I don't see it. So when I go back and when I watch that interview,
right, this is the deeply compassionate and empathic Megan. Remember, we've talked about Megan's kindness before, right? How she's, no matter what everybody says about me, I vow to show them kindness. Even when they tell me that I'm harming them and that what they want me to do is to stop talking about them, I'm going to continue talking about them, but I'm going to do it in a measured tone of voice. And that is kind. That's the extent of her kindness. She has no concept. These are 2 women to whom she is related, to whom she claims a close family relationship, who she talks about Janice as having always been kind to her. And yet here is her opportunity to extend some kindness and some compassion to her close family members. And instead of doing that, she is interpreting their need to feel confident that their sister and daughter is not involved in anything that, in harming her children. She chooses to see that as a nefarious control situation. She chooses to read it in the ugliest possible way, and she chooses to do that publicly on the internet for everyone to see, so that she can spin a narrative along with her new friend Lauren that she understands why all of this happened, and that she's going to be the one to bring us all to the promised land of making sure that nothing like this ever happens again. And on the altar of Megan's, look at her, on the altar of Megan's greatness, She hangs her family members out to dry.
The dynamic between Summer and Janice is very troubling to me. I feel very, I have so many emotions come up for me thinking about that. But the main,
I have so many emotions come up about that. I can't describe them or explain them or even think of one off the top of my head, but definitely a lot of emotions, because that's what a normal person would feel.
major one is thinking about where Summer is in that family system and the fact that she probably doesn't have her own identity at all.
Can you imagine having this person tell you that you have no identity at all? Summers says it's a huge red flag to try to be a loyal sister you have known and loved. She wouldn't know you. Yeah, that's exactly it, right? Like she, like the worst possible interpretation of filial love and support is that's our Meigs, right? Like how awful of Lori's sister and mother to support her, to want to believe her, to not want to believe the worst things about her. How awful. How could they? It's sick. I mean, you have to be sick to think like that. And that's where these people give themselves away, right? Megan the empath, Megan the healed scapegoat who's outside the family system is over here being an absolute bag of shit.
So even as adults, the parroting continues.
Yeah, and it's very much this dynamic of
says Lauren, parroting the words of Megan and just falling hook, line, and sinker for the version of events of a person she knows probably nothing about, except who her blood relation is.
you want love and acceptance and belonging from your parents and your family. And so
do you?
When you think that that's the only way to get love and belonging is from your parents, because they create that world for you and they make you feel like that's the
This is you. She's describing you, Summer. I hope you realize this, that you're the only way that you can exist as a person is by parroting every single thing that your parents ever do. So good that she's here to tell you all about yourself.
only place you can get love and belonging. When you do something that doesn't fit with,
like, what? Why would she say that? What makes her think that the only place that Summer could get love and belonging is from the two people that were her parents? I mean, for God's sake, does she even think about what she's saying?
with what your parents want, or with
It's right along there. Sorry, I can't listen to her. She's so awful. It's right up there with her talking the other day about how Tylee was an unloved daughter. Like, who the fuck says that? Tylee was deeply loved by many, many, many people. You know, Lori's lack of feeling for Tylee is irrelevant. What's relevant is Megan is up there talking about her cousin who she claims to have nothing but, you know, difficult feelings of having to, you know, be, I mean, my God. And she's calling her an unloved daughter. Like, this is Megan's kindness. This is Megan's kindness.
With what they think, it is incredibly risky.
I don't know. Did she ever meet Tylee? I get confused. I don't think that she ever met JJ or Charles.
You're risking tearing apart that feeling of acceptance and love, and you're risking not getting acceptance and love from your parents. Which, when you're,
I mean, spare me, Megan. My God, do you know how many people have turned their backs on toxic parents because they realized their parents were toxic? She talks about Summer and the rest of the Coxes as though they have no free will. They have no ability to think critically. They have no ability to separate from their parents in the normal way that most people do. She talks about everybody as though we're all just walking around. We're all just these Pavlov's dogs walking around reacting to stimulus. And she's out there just watching us all going, oh, aren't they silly? Look at what they're doing. They know not what they do. She's like the Barbara Woodhouse of people, right? No bad people. They're just misinformed, but I can teach them all how to be better. I am Megan. And she got fucking nothing. She got fucking nothing for us, literally.
healed and you're healthy, you realize that that's an okay thing. but it's almost like
when you're healed and healthy like me.
There still is this parent-child dynamic where the children, even though they're adults, aren't allowed to have their own lives or their own thoughts or their own feelings or anything outside of the family system.
So,
man, what a piece of filth this woman is. She's just, it's to me one of the most maddening things about Megan is that she's such a twee little idiot, and yet she has been allowed to have this impact. It's just so frustrating. Like, oh God, she's just so nothing, and yet she has been able to just harm this massive array of people with her stupid bullshit.
to remind people, when that interview you're referring to is, again, as you said, before the children were found, people still had hope. Janice and Summer did do their one and only interview when it comes to their daughter and sister's case. When a friend sent it to you and you watched it, were the children still missing? Was it around the time they did the interview?
It was shortly after the interview aired, so the children were still missing, and that was sort of the time where I decided I needed to work through my own grief and process my own grief, because every time something came up, it was like I was starting the grieving process all over again. And so I made a conscious decision. I had been doing EMDR therapy, which I'm sure you know, but for those who don't know, it's a reprocessing kind of therapy where you try to separate negative emotions from traumatic events. And I was having a lot of success with that. And it really...
Okay, I really, really don't like Megan, but I have got to say that I am a proponent of EMDR. If you have traumatic memories that are kind of troubling or invasive, or just trauma that you've experienced that has affected you in your life, EMDR can be extremely effective, and it can kind of cut to the chase in a way that talk therapy can't reach. So it's an extremely effective modality. So just say she, broken clock.
Really saved my life, I think. And I made a conscious decision to do an EMDR session regarding Lori and JJ and Tylee and Alex. And I just remember making all of these notes in my journal and thinking, what do I even process? Because you really have to fixate on one particular thing in order for EMDR to really be effective, or at least for me, that was my experience. And I said, what do I even process? Is it my family system? That's too broad. My relationship with Lori, that doesn't cover everything. The possibility that these kids are no longer alive. I couldn't think of one thing that was going to make it better, because it's so all encompassing. It's not just about the family system, but it's also about these horrific acts that.
Yeah. So who's Indelible Bloom? What's this about? Indelible Bloom, are you going to come over here and tell us all about what happened in the Cox family? How could you know that? Were you there? Just curious, Indelible Bloom.
At the time, we didn't know if the kids were alive or dead, but my gut feeling was that they were not alive. Okay. I felt at that point that there was no way, from, what people in the families had said, is that, Lori's hiding the kids, or, she's trying to avoid Kay and, all that. So none of that rang true to me at all. And I thought, there's no way that these two kids have been gone this long and that they're still alive. So for me, I had to make a conscious effort to go in and process the death of the kids before they'd been found, before we really knew that they were gone. And doing that for me gave me the ability to be able to look at this whole situation in a different light, making the assumption that the kids were gone.
Again, so she's better than everybody else because she realized before everybody else did, while everybody else was still trying desperately to hold out hope, Megan had already realized the truth and gone and gotten herself all healed up so that she could now come back and tell everybody, she could see from the outside, right? Because she's all healed up now. So again, I just have to say thank God for Megan, because I'm not sure how any of us would have gotten through this without her.
And that actually really helped me, because I believed that the spirits of those children were being cared for after their death. That's sort of what my mind landed on when I was doing my EMDR therapy. And that gave me the ability to then start.
Megan's pretending that she was struggling to deal with intrusive thoughts about the kids.
Trying to understand everything that was happening. And try to go back and analyze the family system and the patterns and all of the things that I felt like led to this. And it's one of the reasons I have to say selfishly why I'm doing this is because it helps me to try and make sense of an insensible situation.
Yeah, and I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit how it affects anybody else because it's helping me. So that sounds like Megan.
And to try and process through these memories and think, there were red flags, there were warning signs, there, were times where all these people who say Lori was the sweet, wonderful person, she was a doting mom, that was not the Lori that I knew. And actually, I have to say, that was Lori's veneer. That was her external personality. So people who didn't know her, of course, she would come off that way. She was very charming. She was beautiful.
She was the primary president in
Yes.
Hawaii,
Yes.
meaning she's in charge of all the children and they're singing. Yes.
Yeah. She was a hairdresser. She was a beauty queen. She was a cheerleader. It's like if you took every stereotype of, the all-American, sweet, successful mom, Lori.
It's hard not to imagine that Megan is gratified by Lori's fall from grace. It really is hard for me not to imagine that she doesn't get enjoyment out of, of Lori's fall from grace, because she can now sit up here and lord it over. She can say whatever she wants. Nobody can, Lori can't dispute her version of events. Just wild. It's okay, Indelible Bloom. I accept your apology and I hope it's sincere, and we will just move on.
Did all of those things. She was all of those things, unless you disagreed with her or unless you stood in the way of her getting something that she wanted. And then she was vicious.
And you saw that.
Again, it sounds like a lot of projection to me. It's obviously a very weird position to be in to defend Lori. But the fact that Lori is in prison for the things that she did does not mean that Megan isn't lying about her, is all I'm going to say.
Yeah.
Tell me how you saw that. I mean, you've told a couple stories that I'm thankful that you told. Any other examples of that you can share?
Well, the main one I have to say, and the only time I was really on the receiving end of Lori's displeasure was shortly after I moved in with her and Adam. We lived in Austin together in an apartment.
Was this between, by the way, she was married to Joe Ryan during that time, divorced, and then met Charles. At what point in her, clearly she's living with Adam, so she might be single, but where in this sort of order of marriages was she, or in life, do you know?
So she had already married and divorced Nelson at this point.
Okay. Nelson was her first.
Just to say, they were still very young, right? Even Lori's first marriage was very young, so they were still in their teens, both of them at this point. I think Adam is a little bit older, but the two girls were still like 18 and 19. I think that's right.
Husband.
Right.
So no Colby yet. No William.
No Colby yet.
Okay. So this is before she had children.
Yep. We were both single. I was 18. I think she was 19. And Adam was a primetime DJ in Austin, which gave him a little bit of local celebrity status. And my family had already moved to San Antonio, but I was still living in Connecticut while our house sold. And I decided to come down and live with them rather than going back to living with my parents. And actually, Lori and Adam invited me to come and live with them. And so
I feel like that's a lie. And I feel like partly she gave it away by going, actually. And I feel like it just occurred to her at that moment to say that. I just don't get the impression from the personalities of the two people involved, right? Say what you want about Lori, and many people do and have. But Megan actually made a point, right? Lori was beautiful and she was charismatic. I don't believe Megan was either of those things. In fact, I believe she was the opposite. So the idea that Megan, or that Lori, who is older, more beautiful, more charismatic, would invite Megan to come, or that Adam, who at that stage in his life is being a DJ, he wants his charisma black hole of an 18-year-old cousin to come and live with him for the summer. I don't buy it. I just don't buy it. She was born a spool, mom a spool.
I came down there and Lori was working at a tanning salon, so she got me a job at the same tanning salon. We worked together, and we only lived there together for about 4 months. And it was very much like we were not working hard. We were not working full time. Neither one of us was in school. And, you know, Adam, sort of the local celebrity, would take us out at night, and, you know, we would go out to clubs on 6th Street, and neither one of us, of course, were of age, but it didn't matter because we were with Adam. We could get in anywhere. So there was some drinking and partying that was going on. There was another situation with a date where Lori was dating this boyfriend, and she tried to set me up with a guy. It was very similar to what had happened when we were kids. And anyway, eventually there was a guy that was coming into the tanning salon pretty frequently, and, you know, clearly liked Lori, wanted to date her. And they went out on one date. And when she got back from that date, you know, I was asking her how it went, how it was. And she was like, oh, he's kind of a loser. I don't really like him. He's not that good looking, you know, all this kind of stuff. She really seemed like she wasn't interested in him at all. And a few days later, he was in the tanning salon, and Lori wasn't there, or she was in the back. I can't remember exactly what the circumstances were, but he and I were alone, and he asked me if I wanted to go out on a date. And I was like, sure, we can do that. So we went out on a date. When I got back, I remember Lori she very much gave me the cold shoulder. She was being really standoffish with me, which was odd. And the next morning, she started asking me all these questions about.
So I just want to say, because probably a lot of people have joined since since we've been going. And at the beginning, I read a letter from Summer giving her kind of a statement about Megan and setting the record straight a little bit. So her version of what happened in this story is very, very different than the version that Megan is telling right now. So just take all of this with a grain of salt. And if you missed the beginning, don't miss it. Go back and watch it later, because Summer's statement is absolute fire.
About exactly what happened and exactly what we did and all of this stuff. And I was like, you know, I didn't really like him that much either. It's not a big deal. If you want to go back and go out with him, that's totally fine. You know, it was nothing that was that big of a deal to me. And it was not like somebody that I had pined for and wanted to date or something like that. And it seeed to me that was the case with her too. She didn't really seem to like him that much.
You're 18, 19 years old. You know, this is sort of this time you go out with guys, you have fun, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It was not.
Again, the brain trust here, characterizing 18, 19-year-old girls as though they're super casual about their friends or their cousins or their whatever dating the guy that they just dated. Because that's what teenage girls are notoriously super cash about dating. So even though I don't believe that it happened this way, the version of the story that she's telling, or the way, like, it's not a big deal. Like, those types of things are extremely big deal to teenage girls. Do you think we were born? I mean, I was born at night, but it wasn't last night. Megan, come on.
It's not a serious thing for either one of us.
Yeah. It's no big
deal. The next
deal.
day, Lori told me that we were going to the airport to pick up her mom. And I was
Megan, who was so uptight at 13 that she heard the word F and she thought she was going to have a coronary right there in the bathroom, is now, oh, it's no big deal. It's no big deal. She's just
shocked because I didn't know her mom was coming into town. So we drive to the airport, and the whole time that we're driving there, she's continuing to grill me about this guy and about what we did. And then she reveals to me when we get to the airport, the reason her mom is coming is because Lori told her mom what I had done and that I was a bad influence, and Janice wanted me out. She wanted me gone. And so we went to the airport, we picked up Janice.
Right. So this doesn't even make sense, right? None of it makes sense. It makes no fucking sense. It makes no sense that Janice would respond that way. But you know what it does do? It lends credence to Megan's contention later, and that, you know, she contends multiple times throughout her multiple times that she splashes her face all over the internet, that Lori just had to tell the family not to like someone, and that they would all close ranks against that person and not like them anymore. She says that repeatedly. So I think that that's part of this, right? This lends credence to the idea that Lori controlled the whole family, and she could just tell everybody what to do and how to be and who was in and who was out. And I mean, I am completely sure that Lori did a fair bit of manipulating, but I still don't believe this story. I just don't believe that Janice, who has never been described in any way other than kind that I have heard, would like come and do just would fall for all of this. It doesn't make sense to me.
We didn't say much on the way back to the apartment, but I was kind of stunned because I wasn't doing anything that Lori wasn't doing at that point. You know, we were all sort of all three of us in this sort of phase of like partying and exploring and whatever. And I didn't feel like I had done anything wrong at all.
So the other version of the story is that Lori never wanted to go out with this guy. Megan did. Lori came home from work to change her clothes, and Megan had locked herself in the bedroom getting drunk with the guy and having sex with him, and they were rightfully worried, Lori and Adam, that Megan was going to get herself up the duff while she was staying with them for the summer. And so they didn't want that on their hands, and they asked her to leave. That story hangs together without even having to think about it or look into it or question it in any way, right? That's just, I believe it immediately. It just sounds very believable and very truthful, whereas Megan's version of events has so many holes, you know. You could use it for a fishnet, for like saying.
But it was very clear that nobody was going to have a conversation with me about it. It was very clear that this was not a debate. It was very much like, we're going back to the apartment to pack up your stuff and you're leaving.
Why would it be a debate after you have made yourself at home, locked yourself in Lori's room, having sex and getting drunk while she needs to get in there to get her stuff for work? Why would there be any debate? And why would you deserve a debate? On your way, little girl.
And so I did. I packed up my stuff and I got on a Greyhound bus and came to San Antonio. My parents had no idea I was coming. And that was it. That was.
Janice didn't even tell your dad, like, you know, her brother?
I don't think they had a conversation about it, because when I talked to my dad about it recently, he didn't remember any of that happening. So that was.
Oh, that's convenient, right? She goes and checks in with her parents, how much they remember. How much can I lie about this? Is anybody going to refute my story? Whew, my dad doesn't really remember, so that's good.
That would not have been the way that things go in the family. Is like, you don't have a conversation with them in advance. It's like, if something happens, we may talk about it later, but it's never in the interest of, hey, help me understand what happened here. It very much would have been this passive aggressive, sarcastic kind of, so you kicked my daughter out kind of thing. You know, I'm speculating, but it doesn't seem, it would not have been normal for Janice to call up my dad and say, hey, your daughter's being a bad influence on my daughter, and I don't think they should live together anymore.
You see, I very much doubt it. It just doesn't make sense to me that they would, the Cox family would send her on her way after that kind of behavior and not say, hey, you know, we had to send her home because, you know, Lori and Adam can't be responsible for your teenage daughter running amok. That's got to be on you guys. It seems like the whole idea that they would just send her home without even a word passing between none of it, right? None of what she says makes sense without going, well, yeah, but why would such and such, right? Like, why would you, what? Like, whereas the story that we hear from Summer is just an effortless, like, yeah, that makes sense.
That would have been
nothing ever direct like that.
No,
right?
That would have been direct, proactive, and somewhat healthy, you know, but that's not the way things were done.
So you were talking to your dad recently, you mentioned, and of course, you know, I want your dad's privacy to remain private. But I am curious. So, well, I'll just ask if you don't want to answer, it's okay. You are talking to your dad about this. Has this affected all of the family, you said there was a polarization. So I guess the answer is yes, but is your dad trying to process it too, or is he mostly there for you to process it?
No, I think all of us are trying to process it. We're all trying to wrap our brains around it. And I think all of us, there have been points where we've all sort of questioned our role, our possible role in any of this, and in our relationships with Lori, our growing up and dealing with the family. And all of us have had to sort of do a.
Really? Megan's had to do some soul searching to see if she had a role in what happened. I just don't buy that at all. Again, it's a way of aggrandizing herself and making herself seem like she's one of the key players. You may remember how she did that with Christina? Remember how she did the whole, I was there, I was in the bar at CrimeCon, I am one of the key players. I was one of the people that tattled on Christina. I was personally there. And my good friend Lauren revealed to me that the reason she doesn't get a booth at Crime, like,
gut check moment of, you know, are we in danger? Those kinds of things. But I think, you know, my dad's trying to process through it too. My siblings are. It's really hard. Nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody in our family wants to talk about it. It's because it's just hard to process. So I have felt,
again, right? Like, I mean, it's so tiring to me listening to her talk about all this as though she's a victim of some unique set of circumstances. Like, name me a single family that would find this sort of a situation easy to talk about and process, right? Like, it's just absurd the way she always has to position herself as uniquely affected in a way that other people wouldn't be or can't be or couldn't be somehow. Like, really? No shit, Megan. I mean, I don't know. Like, I don't know why you would need to sensationalize this story. I mean, it's got some pretty inherently sensational aspects without Megan making her every waking moment and every intake of breath, you know, a personal experience of victimhood.
I felt pretty alone in this too, because most of my friends are not really true crimers, what I would say, you know.
Now that's a unique position to be in, when it turns out that one of your family members has serially murdered some people, that you feel alone because your friends aren't true crimers. You gonna allow that to sink in for a little minute? Because you need to have people who are familiar with the true crime genre in order to understand what you're going through, because normal humans whose interests lay, say, in golf or, you know, extreme sports or something. It's one of the, like, I mean, she says a lot of dumb shit, but are you fucking kidding me? You are victimized by the fact that your friends aren't in the true crime genre? That's a new one, Megan.
Like, really interested in pursuing following these kinds of cases, because they find it disturbing, and understandably so. And so I felt like I've had to kind of deal with this largely on my own, which is okay, because I do have the tools that I need to.
Actually fine, because I'm perfectly healed up. I mean, I don't want anybody to think that I can't cope or that I'm not perfectly healed up, because I am perfectly healed up. I did a course of EMDR, so just saying.
Process these kinds of things, but it sure would be nice to feel supported and, you know, and have some outlet for it.
I'm just going to give you some advice. Talk faster. Maybe people would be interested in listening to you if you talked faster. This is at 1.5 speed.
It's like we can talk about it to a certain extent, and then we have to let it go because it's just too hard to deal with.
Yeah, and I'm sorry about that. You know, my husband, forensic
I just think that's bullshit, right? I think that then you probably don't have any real friends, right? Because, yeah, I mean, I think obviously trauma and loss and stuff, people are afraid and they don't know what to say to the victims and the family members and all that kind of thing. But, you know, people with ride or die friends, people with true deep relationships with others, are able to find people, right? Have people in their lives that are willing to be there for someone who is really needs them, right? And I don't think Megan can even conceive of what that means, to really be there for someone, right? And so she paints everybody with that brush, that nobody is able to be there for others. Not really, not in a situation like this. And I just think that's a load of shit. And for someone who is trying to put herself out there as this healed healer who's going to show us all the way, it's a very backward thing to say, to suggest that, you know, I mean, I can imagine that it is a lonely experience in many ways, because there's not that many people who have experienced what you've experienced. And so there's not going to be people who are ever going to fully understand where you're coming from. But to suggest that you need to have friends that are familiar with the true crime genre in order to be supported through a tragedy is the stupidest thing a therapist could possibly ever say, honestly. Yes, this is 1.5 speed.
Psychologist always says a better understanding of crime is a better understanding of ourselves. And I can see that in you. You're trying to understand. And sometimes it
Lauren made a match. She's like, the square peg in the square hole. I found one, guys. I found one. This is what Dr. John said. I am smart.
takes crime, it takes these tragedies to really process things, to really look back.
It takes these tragedies to really process things, to really understand ourselves. Now, there's some deep wisdom. People who have not experienced a horrific tragedy will never truly understand themselves, according to the genius Lauren Matthias.
And understand ourselves and our families and people.
It takes these
and
tragedies.
It is true that some people are willing to look at crime, and other people it's very difficult.
Yeah.
But sometimes I think that we like to.
Yeah, Lauren's one of those people who is willing to look at crime. She's willing to look at the hard truths. She's one of the dumbest people going.
Think that it's because crime doesn't affect us; it only affects other people.
Right.
Until it affects us.
Until it does. Yeah. And that's exactly what we're dealing with here too. All of us, and me included, have had to look back and say, well, I came from this family system too. And it's sort of a there but for the grace of God go I thing. Why?
Literally, she was like, oh, thank God, because now I can find relevance on the internet because nobody was paying attention to me before, but now everybody's going to have to pay attention to me. There but for the grace of God. You are lapping it up like the cat with the cream, my disgusting friend Megan.
Lori, how did Lori get to that place, but I didn't?
You mentioned a couple of things I want to bring up because it relates to Cwime's testimony in court this week. And I find it really interesting, and I'm seeing a pattern with Lori. Religion was a big part of their life. You say, as you say, Barry liked to pontificate. He liked to bring up current events. And when he did bring up current events, religion was always involved, which means that religion was sort of fit into even non-religious things at the house.
Is this at this point that Lauren is still sort of semi-pretending that she has left the church, right? And she doesn't want to associate herself too closely with the Mormon church. So she wants to have the goods because she used to be a Mormon. But she doesn't want to be associated with the crimes. So she used to be a Mormon, but then we find out later that she deeply loves her faith when she comes and tells us about her Mormon story. So just remembering that.
They were very LDS, or, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. You mentioned that you and Lori were...
You can literally hear the whirring of the gears spinning around in Lauren's brain while she's trying to figure out how to be deep.
For drinking, and there's no judgment there. A lot of younger kids drink, whether they're LDS or not LDS. But when it comes to Lori, it's really interesting because she's so religious. She's so... I don't even know if I want to say faithful because she's also a criminal behind bars, but she's so enmeshed with her religious ideology. My husband has almost said it's like her identity.
Mm-hmm.
Cwime brought up that Lori was always sort of changing the rules, though, that the rules didn't apply to her. In the LDS faith, alcohol is not involved, and sex before marriage is not involved. And there's this, it's what many, call a high demand religion. And again, while teenagers rebel and that's expected, with Lori, it's sort of this contradiction. Does that, you know what I mean? Like I don't know how to explain. There's this odd, blinder factor. Is it true that the rules not apply to her?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You'll see that with, we saw that with Barry, right? He wrote this huge long brief against the government for, trying to dismantle the IRS and then published that into a book later. And so definitely you have Barry who thinks that he's above the law. He went
to prison for this and then wrote the book after. Talk about,
I don't know if that's true. From what I understand, and I haven't read the book, from what I understand, the book is actually just an expansion of his legal brief that he wrote. Okay. I don't think there's much more added to it than that. But yes, he served time in prison for tax evasion. And he also practiced law without a law license. And,
interesting that Lauren is, I know she's a journalist and she's not the story, but Megan is kind of describing Lauren's dad's own criminal career. No, didn't he spend a little bit of time in prison? Didn't he do some things that were much, 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 much worse than this, like robbing farmers of their entire life's savings and things like that? Just reminding you in case you forgot. Lauren's sitting here judging everybody's dads who went to prison while she's not reminding us all that her dad also went to prison.
He was an estate planner, but he was not an attorney, so he wasn't allowed to.
For practicing law when he wasn't supposed to be practicing law. Exact same crime.
Say he was an estate planner, but he did anyway. There's this whole dynamic from Barry that he's above the law. He's better than everyone else. And I will tell you, the most pervasive thing that runs throughout the cult of Cox is this concept of.
Did you hear that? Did you hear that? The cult of Cox. Hey, Gemini Man, nice to see you. That's what she just said. This cousin, this healed up cousin of the family who is out here to paint everybody, tar everybody with the same brush so that she can get some relevance on the internet. She literally just said the cult of Cox.
Of the lower 95. We heard this all the time from Barry, where he would say,
I mean, come on, the lower 95. She makes it sound like Barry's like it's so unusual for somebody to talk about the great unwashed. I mean, most people have some part of their personality that allows them to kind of see other people as them. It's actually literally part of like how we function in the world, because we're not capable of managing kind of internally groups larger than about 150 people. And to see yourself as your group as better. Look at her with her head tilted back, literally looking down her nose to tell us all about how Barry thought he was superior. It's unbelievable to watch. She's just such an unbelievable idiot. But yes, the great unwashed was coined. I don't even know when. Like the idea that or that plebeians or that the uneducated or whatever, like it's a completely normal concept. And she tries to paint Barry as some kind of I don't know, like just with that one bit of evidence as proof that he thought he was better than everybody. I never met Barry, but I just think that she's so full of shit that you just can't let anything go by.
It basically meant he would make an offhanded comment about somebody doing something stupid, and he would say, well, that's the lower 95. And what he meant was,
oh my God, how awful.
Was that 95% of the population are stupid, arrogant, lazy, ugly, and the other 5% are the successful ones and the smart ones and the beautiful.
Literally pure projection coming from Megan, right? Who is constantly talking about how, you remember the way she talked about the other women that she was in group with, where she went to group and she healed herself right up, and that group therapy was so important for her, and she got so healed that she stopped even doing the therapy and just spent her time judging everybody else in the group for not doing the therapy as well as she was doing it. Remember that? And how she could see all the mistakes that they were making, and she was going to come out here again. Look at her face, right? She thinks she is better than every fucking buddy. Like, it's not just, I'm not just getting lucky with the pause game. She really has this feeling that she is superior to everyone, and she's sitting here describing herself and thinking she's describing somebody else. It's one of her go-tos.
Beautiful people. And he absolutely considered himself and his family to be in that top 5%. And that theme came up all the time. It was what drove all of their thoughts and opinions, that they were more beautiful than everyone else. They were more successful than everyone else. They were smarter than everyone else. And we even felt that, from my family system, we felt less than, or treated less than, and it also went to this whole obsession with outward appearances, and just the beauty aspect of everything. It was like, you always got complimented on what you looked like before anybody said anything else. You would walk in the door in the Cox household and they would say, oh my gosh, you're looking so beautiful. Your hair is so wonderful. It was like this fake, very sugary, sweet sort of, I just love your outfit. Oh my gosh, you're looking so wonderful. And your children are so beautiful. It was not like, how are things going? Are you okay? It was never any of that kind of conversation. And that's what I think, explains this disconnect that you see in Lori's behavior, where she wants to appear super religious, but in reality, she's.
Megan's always talking about it. It's just the weirdest thing, right? This is the second time. The last video I did about her, she was talking about saying to the cashier, how are you? Because that's what your cashier wants when they're at work, right? They want Megan to come and look deep in their eyes and go, how are you? And now she's doing the same thing here with this, right? Like, this is just not the way, this is not what people want. It's very normal when people arrive at your house to do the surface social thing. Oh my God, I love your hair. Oh, you have a new blouse. Oh my God, your kids look great. This is very normal. This is not evidence of pathology. This is evidence of social greases that we apply when people arrive to sort of smooth over the arrival and get everybody in the door and everybody settled with a drink in their hand. And we have small talk until we get into a position where maybe more intimate conversation is going to spontaneously arise, and people will, and maybe it won't arise. Maybe the family's not that close. Maybe people don't want to share their innermost whatevers, right? She's literally talking about social graces as though it's some kind of a pathology that is part of the evidence in this case, that she is on the case. Like, it is so embarrassing to listen to her. I'm sorry, we're only 50 minutes in and it's 2 hours long. I don't know if we're going to get there today, folks.
It's not. And I remember being super shocked. One of those first times we went to visit, we would go to church with the Coxes, and we'd go to sacrament meeting. And then after sacrament meeting was over, Lori and Adam wanted to load us up in the car and go to Del Taco.
Oh my God, that is super shocking. No wonder she was super shocked. That is super shocking. Kilu says, as the Queen said, recollections may vary, meaning some people named Megan may be lying in general. Yeah. I mean, are her lips a moving?
And I was shocked, because you don't do that. Like, you go to all 3 hours of church. You don't ever go anywhere on Sunday. You don't go to fast food restaurants. You don't spend money. You keep the Sabbath day holy.
This is like, she's literally talking about herself as though she was the ideal Mormon. We already know that, like, her go-to move was to run away from home if her parents ever tried to discipline her for her terrible behavior. And she's like talking about like going to Del Taco as though it's, committing some kind of at least a misdemeanor, for God's sake. How are we supposed to buy this? It's just exhausting.
You go home and study the scriptures, or you watch a Disney movie or something, family appropriate. Right. But I was on board. I was like, yeah, I would love to go to Del Taco instead of going to Sunday school. That's way more fun. And then they would come back for the third hour, so nobody knew they were gone. So it's like this little nudge, wink, wink. Like, we're living the commandments, but we're really not. And that was pervasive throughout the entire existence.
Again, more proof of the cult. The Cox cult. Is that what you called it? The Cox cult. That they didn't stay for the whole 3 hours, that on the one day of the week when they didn't have to work and they blah, blah, blah. I mean, we're talking about a family with a lot of kids, maybe a whole 3 hours in church. Like, they're talking about it like she's talking about it as though the strict adherence to all Mormon rules is like the right way to be. And yet at this point in her life, she has declared herself an atheist and left the church, right? So it's like really hard. Like, which is it, Megan? Were they responding normally to extremely strict religious rules that were maybe a little bit difficult to follow when you had that many kids or whatever? Like, you know what I mean? Like, to think that every single body in the whole LDS church was all behaving in one way, but the Cox cult was over here going to Del Taco. No wonder what happened. They went to Del Taco of a Sunday.
Of this family culture. It was like, we have to appear on the outside as though everything is perfect, but on the inside we know it's not, and we don't talk about it.
So
yeah, I mean, most families are like that. Have you fucking seen Facebook lately, Megan? Have you read anything about psychology? Are you familiar with Lacan at all? Have you looked into anything at all that would give you some kind of an insight into what you're talking about? Anything at all? The obsession with image is the most fucking human thing about all of us. We all care about our image. We get up in the morning, we put our makeup on, we blow dry our hair, we try to present ourselves in the best way. We have a style, we have a way we want to be. We have MySpace was the beginning of it. What are you going to put on your wall to show your identity and who you are and your individuality? Like, this is what people do. This is who people are. And she's acting like it's a fucking pathology to want to present a good image out in public. I mean, we're literally soaking in this. This is what people do. I mean, obviously, there are people like Megan and Lauren who become obsessed with image, and there is nothing behind that. But to want to present your family in the best light is an extremely normal behavior, just like everything she has literally described being a victim of so far.
Maybe the rules are good for the lower 95.
Exactly.
But for us, we're above.
We're above that. We're above that. I remember.
So Megan, Lauren, who is such a big, faithful Mormon, is drunk most days, in my experience. So, rules for everybody else, but not for Lauren. Interesting.
One time, Barry got up in sacrament meeting to bear his testimony. And Barry and Janice were temple workers in the San Antonio temple, which is one of the reasons that I got totally turned off to going to the temple, because I was thinking, if these people are temple workers, how holy of a place is it really? But I remember.
Okay, but she's going to go on to describe something that Barry said as being nasty. And basically the thing that she's going to describe Barry saying is basically exactly what she just said. So
I remember Barry getting up and bearing his testimony, and he was working at the desk in the temple. So he was scanning people's recommends as they came in. And his comment in front of the entire congregation was,
this is the temple. This is the temple. So it's not like,
I'm just going to say this is just one of the dumbest interpretations of the most simple situation that I have literally ever heard in my entire life. So just prepare yourself.
It's not church. For everyone that isn't LDS here doesn't know, the temple is different than church. You go to church each Sunday to worship, Sunday school or Del Taco, if you're hanging out with your Cox cousins. And the temple is a place where you can choose to go. It's voluntary for different ordinances, for the dead, for yourself. And so when Barry's working in the temple, means he's volunteering and being there to help. So go ahead. Yeah, I just want
and you have to be called to be a temple worker. You have to be recommended by your bishop and your stake president. And it's not just just anybody could be a temple worker. You have to go through a process to be a temple worker. And so those of us who are in the faith would say, if you're a temple worker, that must mean that you're really living the gospel and you're really doing everything right. And you're an example because you're officiating in ceremonies in the temple. And so when you go to the temple, you dress up just like you would if you're going to church, but it's a weekday thing. It's closed on Sunday, right? So Barry was giving this testimony.
This is all to lead up to how extremely bad Barry was, right? She's giving us all the lowdown on everything that is expected to be a temple worker, so that she can now contrast Barry's badness with the ideal temple worker from the woman who has left the church and is an atheist.
In front of the congregation in church on Sunday, and he was talking about being at the desk and taking recommends from.
Oh, Summer, it seems like Summer is signing off. Bye, Summer. Thank you so much for coming. It was an absolute joy to have you here, and thank you so much for sharing. Really, really appreciate you. Have a beautiful rest of the Sunday.
People who are coming into the temple. And he said, I'm watching these people come in, and they're not attractive, and they're not dressed well. These are not A-list celebrities. These are not people that I would go up to on the street and want to talk to or want to be with. But I know they have a temple recommend. So they must be good people. These must be, the kind of people that we want to hang out with and aspire to be, even though they're not very good looking and they're not very attractive and they're not dressed very well.
So to me, she is interpreting this as like he's saying all these ugly people shouldn't even be in the temple, that it should only be the best people. But I think that you could quite easily interpret what she claims he was saying. I mean, who knows? It could all be a lie. But I think you could interpret it as him saying you can't judge a book by its cover, right? Maybe these aren't the most beautiful people in the world. Maybe they aren't the most learned. Maybe they don't have the latest fashions or the most up-to-date whatever, but they are members of the temple. So clearly they have good hearts, and we shouldn't judge them by what's on their outside. I mean, obviously I wasn't there. I don't know what Barry said. If he even said anything, she could be making it all up. But it seems like a very simple interpretation could be that he was saying you shouldn't judge a book by its cover.
And I just remember I was in the foyer in the lobby and was listening to this over the loudspeakers, and I could not believe what I was hearing. And I actually just had to leave the church, leave the building.
Yeah, leave that temple foyer or whatever.
Yeah, because she is so principled and she is so innocent. She was so deeply shocked by his words that she had to leave the temple because it was so upsetting to her. or she had to leave I guess it probably wasn't temple. I don't know. Anyway, I'm not Mormon. I don't know if she was in temple or church, but wherever it was, she had to leave. I don't believe it.
Yeah, I couldn't stand to listen to that anymore, because I mean, here we are in a church who bears the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, and we are supposed to be loving and accepting of everybody. We're supposed to, as the scriptures say, we're not supposed to look on the outward appearance, because God looks at our hearts. And here you have somebody who is a quote unquote pillar in the community, very well respected in the church community. He's a temple worker. So he's set up there as an example. And you've got him in a congregation of people talking about how ugly these people are coming into the temple. You know, it was one of those moments where I had to just excuse myself, because I couldn't believe what I was hearing. And it was upsetting.
Yeah. Again, like, it's just so hard to believe that anything like that would upset Megan, because she has no feelings. She has no empathy. I mean, I don't know. I mean, if she's a psychopath, maybe she doesn't have any feelings, but she certainly seems, I mean, she gets mad. We've seen that, right? She gets mad and she swears at us and gives us all the finger and tells us to fuck off and stuff like that. But her manner doesn't really ever change much, right? She's got that real dead inside vibe. Whoop. What? I don't know what that's about. And summer has gone, so I can't ask her. Yeah, so okay, I'll just carry on a little bit more.
Well, the lack of awareness is stunning to me too.
Coming from the weird sisters, the lack of awareness is stunning. I would agree with that.
For him to, he's not even just saying this to you or his family at the dinner table. He's saying this to everyone here. Like, they all think the same thing, that he thinks that this makes complete sense.
Yeah, he's introduced.
Right? Interesting, because Megan is here telling these stories that make no sense, and she thinks that they make sense, and Lauren is falling for them. So I think that we could call that irony. That's irony.
Using the concept of the lower 95 to the greater church population, basically, and saying that he's in that 5%. And you guys are the rest of you are the lower 95, but you're here in church, so maybe you're good people anyway.
Wow. Was there any? Oh, well, you left. I was like, were you looking at any reaction, or people just kind of doing their own thing?
Yeah, I
probably were in a different space than you were, listening to your uncle.
Yeah, for sure. And maybe it was.
Faye Loves Nature says she didn't even clean her nails before she flipped everyone off, and I was actually wondering if that was deliberate, because it was so gross. Like, her hands were so gross. It was hard to imagine that she was not aware. Like, that she was just walking around with hands like that. She's that filthy and she's making videos. It was really gross. It was really gross, Kathy. Her hand, it was disgusting. I mean, the whole being given the finger thing, like, oh no, oh, it's so upsetting. I mean, I was more grossed out by the filthy fingers than I was by being given the finger.
You know, I like to call Fasted Testimony Meeting Open Mic Sunday, because literally anybody can get up and say anything that they want. And I've heard some incredibly shocking and horrifying things during those meetings.
This is a once a month meeting at the church. It's a worship service. So once a month in the LDS church, any member can get up during the main meeting with the congregation and share their thoughts. And yes, open mic Sunday is a good way to put it. You never know.
Yeah, there's a lot of guidance, obviously, from the church that tells us we're supposed to focus on the Savior, focus on our testimony of the scriptures and those kinds of things. But that's, for a lot of people, they just can't help themselves, and it turns into an oversharing. So
yeah, it's an opportunity. So anyway, I just wanted to share that. So going back to that, have you seen Barry or anyone bear their testimony then in the Cox family on the Sundays, or?
That was a rare Sunday, and the thing was that they weren't in my ward, but they were in the same building that we met in.
Okay.
And so the reason why I was there at that time is because I think we were in our third hour and they were in their first hour. And so I was, walking the hallways with one of my kids and happened to hear that he was up there bearing his testimony. So that's the only time I've ever heard, I think, one of them bear their testimony in public. But we were over at their house for conference every conference, because they had a big screen TV. So we would go over there and take food and sit there for conference. And then of course the discussion afterwards was always, what did we think of that? And Barry never missed an opportunity to share his opinions about the talks with us.
Everyone.
Again, I mean, I don't know. I don't get, like, she's trying to describe this all as though it's somehow nefarious and is of proof of, like, this, Barry created the monster Lori or something. Like, it's just all very simplistic. And Megan is not in a position to be diagnosing anybody. And not only does she not have the credentials, her behavior is extremely cruel, given that she's talking about her family members, right? And she's exactly right. Mariana says, "Is it Megan oversharing about her family all the time?" Yeah, like she tries to frame the oversharing, right? The TMI, the like, this is not your place. She tries to frame it as truth telling, right? That Megan is the hero of the situation, and she's the one who escaped, from this toxic system, and she's here to navigate the way for everyone so that they can all see all of the pieces that come together to create Lori, right? Like, I mean, part of the reason why she has been successful is that, of course, there are reasons why Lori developed into the person that she developed into. And of course, people are curious about those things, partly just out of morbid curiosity and partly out of like, why didn't they see it coming? And could something like this happen in my family and me not see it coming, right? So there are those legitimate needs in the community and the legitimate concern and curiosity. But just Megan is not the right person to be doing it. She doesn't have the permission of the family. She's doing it. She's sort of going rogue under the pretense that she's this truth teller, right? When in fact, what she is being deeply unethical and harmful to her own family members. In order to gain relevance on the internet, in order to build with her own two hands, a 6-figure income, based off of her, unresearched and undocumented and unsubstantiated opinions. And it's heartbreaking for the family members. I mean, whatever it might be for you and me and all the rest of us to be here, even for me to be here pointing this out and saying she's done all this, it's still, those family members still all exist in the real world, right? In the same way that you and me do. And this is all still carrying on for them. While Megan is out here finger pointing and acting like the victim. So it's just, I mean, to me, I just can't with these women. And I am absolutely delighted to have heard from Summer, and to get some pushback that, is not just based on my own kind of feelings of what's going on, but, to hear from Megan likes to talk about the polarized family members, right? But we don't hear from the other pole. We just hear from Megan. So it's done my heart good, and I hope it's done your guys' heart some good to hear a little bit from Summer. I am really running out of steam. I've been going for about 2.5 hours now, and I am only halfway through this, and there's just no chance I'm going to get all the way through it. So I think I'm going to call it a day now. We're about halfway there. And I might consider revisiting this and watching it through to the end. I'm not sure. Megan has done and said a lot of stupid things. And I think it's important to kind of air them out and, show them the disinfectant of the sunlight. But at the same time, I don't think we need to necessarily traumatize ourselves entirely by listening to every cursed word out of her mouth. So, yeah, I'm going to love you and leave you for today. Summer, I know you're gone, but love you and so glad you came today. I am absolutely honored that you chose to trust me, and I hope that this brings you some peace. And anybody else who has been tormented by these weird sisters up in front of us. So, thank you everybody for coming. I will look forward to seeing you next time. I'm not sure, probably it'll be Wednesday. This construction noise starts up again tomorrow, and it'll probably be Wednesday before I can get back online. So I will look forward to seeing everybody then. And thank you all for coming, and we'll see you next time. Bye. Bye.